Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, trying to survive the massive heat wave that's like hitting everybody right now.
Yeah, it's even hitting us up here in Alaska because it is so freaking hot here.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Arizona, and they were like, oh yeah, we've been over 120 like every day for about a month now. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Between that and also I like stumbled across the UFO hearings again, today on YouTube. And at first I was like, wait a minute, I thought that was only one day, but then I realized it was another channel just basically like putting it on a loop. But they had this like thing where it was like CNN dash whatever News 18 live, and they had the live, thing on YouTube. And I was just like, oh, this like day two. I like jumped to Twitter real fast because yesterday was like, top topic, but it was just a repeat.
Yeah, I did not do any of that. I saw bits and pieces on social media of just people reacting, and I saw thumbnails of various podcast people talking about it. But I didn't watch any of it. I know nothing. Those are my thoughts.
If anybody follows me on social as far as our listeners and stuff, or just first time listening, I was pondering things openly last night about like having just like this existential like thoughts about, okay, we got this UFO hearing, and so like the Star Trek side of me, we're thinking most aliens maybe are good, or I guess they're non-human people are good, maybe, unless they're Klingons or Romulans. And I was like, okay. And then there's like the side of me that, I know we're talking about Oppenheimer tonight and all the things that were transpiring in that movie. And then I was just like, I think the worst case scenarios. So.
Well, we're not just talking about Oppenheimer, but we're also going to talk about the final episode of Secret Invasion, which, I mean, to your point, also plays into that conundrum. Just take out Star Trek and put in Secret Invasion, especially given the premise of that final episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was not doing that last night. And this week I don't really know what happened at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I started the weekend knowing that it was going on, and I ended the weekend thinking to myself, did Comic-Con happen? Did it happen? Because there were a few things. I mean, we're going to talk about a few things, but still, it's not the Comic-Con of years past.
Yeah.
In any way. But so part of it is what we all expected was going to happen at Comic-Con, which is Invincible Season 2 has been confirmed that the first 4 episodes of the 8 they're dropping half of the season on the first day.
No. So, I guess it is. Yeah, I think.
That's exactly all I was reading.
Yeah, they are. That's right. Yeah, they are dropping the first 4 on November 3rd. I was thinking about the boys there for a moment. My bad.
Premiere in early. Oh, okay. So on November 3rd, they're gonna drop 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Then wait until an unknown date in 2024. Guys, 2024 is next year, by the way. An unknown date, but it should be early, so likely it'll be the end of March. Yeah. They're going to drop the last 4 episodes of this season. What the fuck?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Looking at you, DC Titans and Doom Patrol, which we're still waiting for the second half of the final season.
We are notorious for back in the day watching CW shows and always complaining about the breaks.
Yeah.
This is a whole new level of scheduling we've already, when did Invincible Season 1 drop?
It was 2021, I believe.
Years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, and now we're going to get the second season. Yeah, we're not going to get the full second season. We're going to get half of it on one day, only to get another half of it on some day next year.
Yeah.
You can't write stuff.
But on the plus side, at least they were able to get the voice work in for the third season before the strike. So there is that.
But at this rate, I'm not expecting the third season until 2026, Will.
Yeah.
At the rate they're dropping these things. And maybe these episodes are going to be like an hour and a half long, 2 hours long. And so, because while I was waiting for you, I did see on the rundown, I was like, oh yeah, I need to watch that trailer. So I watched the trailer, and I did see the 40 seconds just dedicated to listing all of the actors that are doing voice work, including Sterling K. Brown. I hear you. Got it. And for them to get that many people involved, the writing's going to be there.
Yeah.
It's just my patience where I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. True. Very, very true. Yeah. I know the writing, the acting, the voice actors. I mean, it was just I felt like this is like the year of just getting all this talent, A-list talent in multiple in a project, multiple names. It literally was starring season 2 with, and then like you said, Sterling K. Brown, and then another screen and more people. And of course they have Peter Cullen, who of course everyone is very familiar with, doing the voice of Optimus Prime. So, and of course they end it beautifully with J.K. Simmons as Omni-Man, which was a perfect way to end that trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the trailer. The trailer reminded me why I enjoyed the first season of Invincible without giving away the entire plot of the second season. I'm just kind of annoyed with this release half now, especially with everything that's going on with Hollywood writers and actors right now. I guess that's probably the reason why they're just we're going to release it sometime next year. Because they're going to want these actors. They got all of these A-list actors to be a part of this project. They want them out there talking to the media about it. So that's probably why they've done this split. Which, I mean, at this rate, we should be just thankful we're getting a single episode. But
true. Yeah,
you also let me know that on Amazon right now, people who are dying for Invincible content, Adam Eve's origin story is available to watch.
Yep. It dropped during Comic-Con, and it is available now, and so it'll be kind of your whet your appetite while we wait for season 2 of the main show to return.
Now, can you remind me, because as you reminded me earlier, it's been years since we saw season 1. Who the heck is Adam Eve?
Adam Eve, she was one of the teen. Remember, they had the group of teen heroes, and so she was one of the members of that group, because they had the whole training mod. I think her boyfriend was one of the other. I can't remember the character's name, but basically she was helping Invincible to learn how to become the whole superhero gang. Whenever he figured out his powers and stuff. So, but that's yeah.
Okay, I don't remember any of that, but.
Like I said, I mean, it's been a while. I mean, a part of the reason why the season 2 is delayed, with everything, COVID, of course, fucked with everything. So that's part of the reason why, with protocols and stuff, they just had to it took them a while to do pull all this together and all. But hopefully the gap between seasons 2 and 3 will not be as long. But of course, with the strikes, all bets are, anything's possible at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So Star Trek.
Yeah.
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 I guess it did very well at Comic-Con.
Definitely. Star Trek fans were feasting over the last week, because we had our normal drop of our episode on Thursday. Then on Friday of last week at Comic-Con, there was a panel celebrating the 50th anniversary of the animated series, that with the original series crew, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, etc. And one of the things that they unveiled during that celebration of the animated series is they're going to be doing that same animation treatment to some characters in some of the more recent Star Trek shows. Will Riker from Next Generation, Quark from DS9, so Armin Shimmerman, who plays that character, will be voicing Quark in a little short. They're putting together little shorts within the Filmation animation style. And then Saru, who's portrayed by Doug Jones, which he will be in that as well. So we got that. And then on Saturday, they had their big panel in Hall H, I believe, and dropped the 5-minute trailer, preview for the final season of Star Trek Discovery, which will also air in early 2024. And so we had that. We also got the trailer for season 4 of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is the one of the animated shows that's on Paramount Plus right now. That season premiere will be September the 7th, and they also dropped a poster for that show. And one of the things that Lower Decks does with their key art, they always have homages back to the original series cast films. So this one was in the theme of Star Trek 4, the one with the whales. And so we got that. And then also we did get some news on Star Trek Prodigy. Of course, that was the other animated series on Paramount Plus that got dropped by Paramount Plus, but then it got completely pulled from Paramount Plus, and the second half of the first season was not available anywhere. But we got word that it did get released. The rest of the season 1 was released on physical media, and also got picked up by some other streaming services. I can't remember which ones right now, but you can find it if you not on Paramount Plus, but other potential platforms to watch the back half of season 1 for Star Trek Prodigy. And then the big thing that did happen also was they planned to just show to people who are attending Comic-Con the crossover episode between Strange New Worlds, which is on right now, and Star Trek Lower Decks. But not only did they show it to the folks at Comic-Con, but they dropped it early, and all of Star Trek fandom lost their shit, because we were loving the fact that, this was an episode that folks have been looking forward to since last Comic-Con, and it was an amazing episode. So, I definitely did my usual reviews on it. So go check it out. If you want to see what my thoughts of it was in depth. But other than just the simple fact that I loved the episode. But, so yeah, we were definitely feasting over the weekend.
Yeah. And follow Will's account. He set up another account for, Star Trek Talk. So I don't have the handle in front of me.
Yeah, it's, SNN Blurred Trek. So basically our Star Trek centric stuff is Senior Nerd presents Blurred Trek. So try not to, yeah.
And for those who have been longtime listeners, and we know your handles on Twitter, Will's checking, because I got yelled at. I got yelled at, and so if I'm getting yelled at, y'all better be following that account because we'll be after.
I'm not going to put it on Threads either. I'm sick. We're staying with the sinking ship of that was Twitter or whatever the hell Elon decides to call it these days.
Oh my god. All right. So I'm glad that your Comic-Con was just heavy with gifts in Star Trek and joy. I did not watch the next trailer for Gen V. Did you?
I watched it. I didn't watch it with the Comic-Con presentation. I did watch it a couple days ago. It definitely had the vibe of The Boys. Clearly is it set in that universe and, I'm looking forward to it. I think it drops, I want to say in September. What was it, around the 28th, I think? Or 29th. I want to say there, somewhere thereabouts, but it's one of those things. Yeah. It'll hopefully, fill the Boys fix for now. And, one other thing from Comic-Con that I, also was pretty cool because of the studios not being there, was this whole Project K, which is Kalki 2989.
Mm-hmm.
It was the, first time that, it's a epic sci-fi Indian Bollywood sci-fi movie, that got the Hall H treatment. And I did watch the trailer, and it looks pretty interesting. I have to say, it's inspired by a lot of genre things. It's apparently the highest budgeted film ever, for production budget for Indian film. And I know Indian cinema, and I know you follow Korean cinema and K-pop and K entertainment on Netflix. So it's just great to see some of these other projects getting exposure, at Comic-Con and the place. Yeah.
I did watch that trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will be honest, it looked like a low budget sci-fi show.
Mm-hmm.
Very much. But it did look, there was something very, I don't know. It looks like something where if you like sci-fi TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
then there was something appealing there.
Yeah.
It did seem to have a unique voice
Mm-hmm.
to it. Despite me just staring at the sets, been like, I feel like I've seen these sets in at least 10 other movies when I was a kid. But there's only so much you can do. So it looked, I don't know if I would use the word good, but it looked intriguing. And like what you were saying, something different.
Yeah.
In that same familiar space. Like it's different, but there's also familiarity there too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's coming out in early 2024 as well. I want to say January. So, so I'll definitely probably check it out, because, after I'm looking for, I'm getting this little franchise fatigue as far as some of the sameness of some of a certain franchise that we'll talk about here in a little bit. For me, it was like, even though, special effects wise and stuff, it may not be like what we're used to with, good special with some American productions. It definitely had, I guess, a freshness to it that, like you said, that definitely colored me intrigued.
Yeah. I mean, to go into the next topic, where we talk about Star Wars, which is definitely a franchise that I do find myself erring on the side of fatigue and just too much, too many different things going on, and often hit or miss. As we have Donald Glover and his brother Stephen Glover are set to write the Lando series, of course, after the strike. after the strike. That will be, of course, set to air on Disney Plus probably in 2035.
Yeah, probably. The way negotiations are going, that's probably will be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a part of me is like, oh, okay. But another part of me, I just get haunted by Boba Fett so much that and with Star Wars, over the years, we've gotten so many announcements and so many times it's like a quarter of them actually happen. Or maybe more than that. I'm not sure. I think they probably have better odds than a DC film at this point. Granted, James Gunn is writing the ship. But still, I think I also have not a lot of trust. Like for all we know, they're gonna start. And then by the point in time when it actually gets underway, after the first 2 episodes, we'll suddenly like, this wasn't our vision. Goodbye.
Well, when I heard this, because this was news that was broken by, I have to give all credit to Jeff Snyder, and it's Above the Line publication. So, so it wasn't some rando Reddit thread. It was, it was from a legit entertainment journalist. And, I couldn't, of course, this is Lando from Solo. And of course, Solo's, that first thing that came to mind was, and even when he and John Roca were talking about it on Hot Mic, was Solo and what Kathleen Kennedy did with, Lord Miller, because she didn't like the tone that they were taking the series, the film. And, and the question, you're right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if she doesn't like what Donald and Steven are doing now, it'll be interesting because given that Donald is the star of this series, but, will she change writers in the middle of it if the tone doesn't set what she feels is the appropriate tone for a Star Wars project? So now granted, she's had some bangers with a lot of billion-dollar films, so she clearly knows what she's doing. But that's the thing that as you noted, that sometimes does give me pause with Star Wars, because we have gotten so many things announced. But one thing that I will say, at least even though Mando season 3 wasn't the best, they've had overall better track. Well, yeah, even with Book of Boba Fett, a little bit better track record than Marvel is lately on the TV side. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we shall see eventually. But to go back to the talk about fatigue and franchises, we can now get to what you were alluding to before, is Secret Invasion has wrapped in its 6th episode. Is this the shortest episode of the season?
The last 2 were, yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand that. Every episode felt like it kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
It did.
Granted, this episode, I think overall probably ranks in the better half of the season. I think this show kind of fell in the middle. With the middle episodes, it started strong. I think it ended in a weird way. As much as I'm okay with this episode in comparison to previous ones, I still have issues with it. Yeah, I have issues. Will doesn't want to talk about this show.
Well, it's not that I don't want to talk about it. The theme that came across is sort of like basically what Garvik was saying with Nick Fury. And at the end of the day, you promised us a lot, but delivered very little. And I was just like, man, when I heard him talk about that line in universe, I was like, that's how I feel about this show. It promised so much and it had so many elements but it just didn't deliver. And what's so frustrating about it is it started out, like you said, very strong. And then the middle, the bottom just sort of kind of fell. And I I was very underwhelmed by the finale. I'm just going to be honest.
Right.
And all the things that you and I've talked about with this show, it reared its head again in the finale from the, and we can, well, just like, I'll use one example. The whole speech there at the beginning with Gravik and quote, air quote, Nick. You have this great piece, and honestly, I wish they had had Gravik share that whole sequence as far as how earlier in the series, because then it would have made more sense as far as they touched on it, but he has that speech, and then we find out that actually it's Gaia who's masquerading as Nick Fury. And it goes back to the thing I had too with I'll beat this horse to death, I know, but with Nick and Rhodey and the discussion that they had as far as, their approaches to being two successful black men. And right. And you have that moment there where you're talking about how Nick failed and everything. And he, and Nick, air quote, Nick, retorts, but it's not Nick, it's Gaia. And so it just undercuts.
Wait. Oh, wait. Yeah. The Rhodey scene, it is Nick, but
it's not Rhodey.
But it's not Rhodey. Okay, you said you were talking about that scene and then said it wasn't Nick, and I was like, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But then you go to the finale. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just so wound up. I'm so wound up about this now because you're right. In comparison to both of those, they're very similar issues. I had less of an issue with Gaia, partly because I wasn't thinking that it wasn't Nick. And so I liked the reveal in that sense. Especially with everything else that was going on. This episode, I wasn't overthinking anything or spending too much time outside of it. I was just annoyed by a lot of the decisions at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I was less annoyed with that, but your whole point about Rhodey, spot on, because it's not just that wasn't Rhodey. Everything he did in Falcon and Winter Soldier wasn't mm-hmm. Rhodey. Mm-hmm. Everything he's done since Civil War wasn't Rhodey. Yet. Was it Civil War or Endgame? That's the other thing too, but that's yeah.
Right. But it's very clear that until the third episode of this season, he doesn't realize he's a Skrull. He's not a Skrull pretending to be Rhodey until the third episode of the season. Mm-hmm. And that's what pisses me off. Mm-hmm. It would have been more impactful. It would have been more this is why we like Marvel, is because they plant things way out there, and then you see them come to fruition. Nobody's ever been oh, I bet you Rhodey's Skrull. Right. Ever, not until this season, and even then, it took till the third episode because he literally started acting differently. Mm-hmm. And which just begs the question, why in that episode and for the rest of the season was he acting so differently if since Civil War he has apparently been a Skrull? He would have been acting the same way.
Exactly.
So it's just a very annoying thing to put out there. And it wasn't even it didn't come to realization in a very prominent way. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Talos's death.
Yep.
It happens. You're what? Okay. Yep. And this whole show has a way of these reveals just falling straight flat.
Yep.
There's a tone deafness to this show.
Yeah. And there's just we'll throw concepts and things up on the screen just to but they fall. there's no cohesive, like, there's no cohesion to it, I guess. I mean, what makes a spy thriller or it really work is, like you said, you set things up and you have the rationale and a cohesion to it. And it just, and that it makes logical sense that A, B, and C happen. But it just like went from A to C and there's nothing there in the middle to like, wait a minute. You missed something. Yeah. So, I mean,
I would say, I don't think that there's not a lot of cohesion. I actually think there's a lot of cohesion. There's too much cohesion. And but it's also so surface that it's just, you could bring up all these points about immigration, refugees. Yeah. You touch it, but then it's like you get burned and you're like, but we're not going to actually delve deep into that.
Yeah.
You could have told a very beautiful love story between Fury and his wife, yet it took you a few episodes to introduce her.
Mm-hmm.
And then half the time, and then an episode where you're left wondering, oh, is she working for Gravik? Like, what is this relationship? And then we have this with this finale, this is what pissed me off. I know I'm very strange, but the first bullet I wrote down, technically, is I was like, this is a great conversation between Var and Fury. They're having it over the phone. It's like, I'm going to let you go now. And her response is, you know, you don't have to if you don't want to, darling. And I was like, that is a very clever way of being like talking about something, but not talking about it. Like, very clever.
Yeah.
And then they just threw out the good dialogue for the ending, which was very confusing for me because they reunite, he comes home, and then he says, I'm here. I forget exactly what he says, but he says something along the lines of, well, I'm here to say I'm sorry, beg for forgiveness, but I gotta peace out.
Yeah.
Like, what? And then she goes to him in the cornfield with the space shuttle, and she they kiss, but she's in her real scroll form, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Because there was so many things they could have mined there with their relationship, and you're right. Everything was surface. Like, to your point that I'm glad you brought up about the immigration and that story and now in this episode now, because the president, because he was like duped by this fake roadie all these years, he goes from point A to now he's just going full on, let's build the wall. And so, which again, it's like, wait a minute. So couple things there. And, I don't know if it was intentional that they did it that way, the show, or it was just kind of like, to show how irrational and how extreme, or if it was or if it was just poor writing. Because if it's poor writing, because now you're over, if you're going that way, then you got New Asgard that's like hanging out there in Norway, and all, a good number of the Avengers, and who, so is Thor not welcome now?
Okay. So you're talking specifically about the president's hate speech.
Yeah.
And how you're wondering if it's poor writing because it was such a left turn for that character to make.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah. Or was this intent? Because of all, was this what they were building towards with this story, which is like, it was an intentional thing by Ritson that, and given that, to your point about everything is connected, we do know down the line,
yes,
Thunderbolt Ross does become president. So is this sort of leading to the way where Harrison Ford, can, come back and play, another president, so he can say, get off my plane, so.
But since I think it's like, as you're talking about it, my mind is spinning because I was going to bring up the Thunderbolt Ross thing too. That's going to happen in the next Captain America movie. But there's also Iron Wars.
Ironheart. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
But they're two separate things, right? There's Ironheart and there's Armor Wars. And Armor Wars, I'm led to believe is gonna be Rhodey's redemption thing.
Yeah.
Which could also this whole the president and what happens to him during this final episode and why he through the events of this episode, he declares war on Skrulls and i.e. potentially all aliens.
Yeah.
And which might also lead into the political context of Armor Wars.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's I think, to answer your question, Will, I think it is intentional, but I do think the writing itself was a bit sloppy because as a viewer, up until this point, the president has never really seemed so trigger.
Yeah.
So it's very weird. But then again, he might have had concussion going on. He was just in a serious car accident.
Yeah.
He did witness his right hand man get shot in the head and then turn into an entirely different creature. I mean, PTSD. Yeah. I think they should have just had him resign because after witnessing all of that, the person's gonna be a little crazy.
Yeah. But And to, I think thanks for answering my question. I mean, I think you are right. I think it is intentional, especially given what we know to come down the line. And maybe the Marvels will be where they will start maybe assuming that the right hand is knowing what the left hand is doing. They will clean up what he actually meant with this act of kicking war, but waging, war against any aliens on Earth. I mean, basically, you got to go. Because it does raise, like I said, there's New Asgard and other people who have been friendly to this point. Of course, they conveniently say that the Kree and the Skrull are brokering for peace. So maybe the Marvels will tease that out and clarify that, because otherwise we're going to have, I don't know how Valkyrie's going to be able to stay on Earth and the Asgardians if to take this to its logical conclusion.
Right. But you also have to remember there's the aliens that look like people, and then there's the aliens that look not like people. So I think it's the not like people. Granted, a bunch of people looking like people did get killed because of just the suspicion that they were a Skrull, because they had been, because they were the pod people.
Yeah.
But all of that aside, what I still want answered that was very surface level throughout this entire season was why did the Snap fuck up Fury so much?
Mm-hmm. We never got an answer. Yeah.
Why he come down running saying, I'm here to save y'all. I'm here to save y'all. What? You decided to make a home on my planet? Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We're going to get Skrull superpowers. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Goodbye, guys. You're still going to be on my planet.
And that goes back to my original point. That's why I thought that it undercut everything there, where he, because Cause I was like, and I guess I was thinking, didn't dawn on me to think that was Gaia playing Nick there in that moment. I was like, finally we get this confrontation between the two of them. And, and Nick gives his speech and he talks about the blip and how it in fact impacted him. It was about, as far as like right before I blipped away, I was relieved because this responsibility is no more. And then it was all undercut because it wasn't really him giving that speech,
But even if that's what he actually felt, even if it had been, that wouldn't be enough for me. I'm just like, continue.
True.
Because I don't care about what you felt when you left. I care about why you did what you did when you came back. And also why you and your wife have this weird no ring policy and you seem to use it willy-nilly and I don't understand. There's so many things about this that I don't understand. But it's weird because I want to say a lot of this is color by number, storytelling, but it's just, I guess at the end of the day, my overall review of this season would be, it's just sloppy.
Yeah.
And they do the minimal. They do the bare minimal with the character developments, bare minimum with the plot. But in hindsight, I will be curious, if this show in retrospect becomes better because of what they do with some of these threads that we have already talked about.
Yeah. I mean, it has potential to be redeemed for sure down the line. It does, but right now, to disclose my thoughts on it, it just promised a lot, but failed to deliver, and for now, that's what I have to say about Secret Invasion.
Yeah. Because what Will really wants to talk about right now is Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, you said I was wound up about Secret Invasion. Wait till I get started on this.
Oh yeah, well go ahead. We are here. You can finally let loose about Opie.
Yeah. Oh man, Oppenheimer. So just initial thoughts about this film, because this is so much to unpack with it, and it was one of those movies, quite frankly, that just is staying with me. And it's just been a long time since I've had a film stick with me where at least once a day I'm like thinking about it and like and going down like rabbit holes as far as like fact and fiction and what's true about this man's story and the Manhattan Project and just so from that standpoint, as far as just having an impact, how impactful Oppenheimer was for me as a viewer, to look at something that was a clear moment in history where we had a world before the bomb and a world after the bomb, and then thinking that now to things in present day, where the shadows of some of those things that were going on during the Second World War and the Cold War and other things are we're seeing it play out, and the questions of technology and science and things with AI and the proper how things can be used or how it can be abused. I mean, all those things that really for me just got me just thinking, and when I left the theater, that ending sequence where sheer thought that when that first went on, they could have united the whole damn thing, the whole damn planet. And also, living in the shadow of a world where these things are still around and just like just one snafu and we could all be gone. It just, I don't know. It just, definitely, like I said, it's just definitely something that it just is a film that makes, that stays with you if you really just like take it for what it is. And then just, from a filmmaking standpoint, Nolan, I think it's definitely one of his best films. I know we'll get to our rankings later, but just from the artistic standpoint, and what he was trying to achieve, I think he definitely, if his goal was to make the audience think and ponder about life and death and war and our place in science and how policy and can be influenced by good, bad, and in between things like McCarthyism and other things like that. I mean, he in my opinion, he succeeded. So those are my just quick thoughts to start us off about Oppenheimer. There we go. Yeah.
Those are 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went with my dad. My dad is a big history person. My dad is very judgmental of films. And you think I have a bad suspension of disbelief? He has it worse. And he loves Dunkirk, which is the only other historical film that Nolan has put out. And he loved it. And we walk out of the theater. He loved Oppenheimer. He going into it, he had his worries. But during it and after, I could tell that it's very historically accurate from everything he told me. He's a huge history buff. Like, I can't overemphasize this.
Yeah.
And he, like what you said, is also now going down rabbit holes. He sent me a lot of different things, and I'm like, Dad, I watched the movie too.
I remember you sent me a message earlier in the week.
Yeah. So I feel like he's with you, Will, and I'm like right underneath there, where I think this is a wonderful movie. I think it is one of Nolan's better movies. I do have to admit, I did not walk out questioning everything that Will just said.
Yeah, that's fine.
It did not hit me in that way because I'm just fascinated by Nolan. So I do have to admit, I spent a lot of the movie being like I'm engaged, but I'm like, so why did he pick black and white? Like, what is going on here? Why, what's with the sound design going? Why is it being shot from this angle? Like,
I did too.
I spent so much time with that I still leave this film like I do with virtually all Nolan films, where I'm like, that was a very well made movie.
Yeah.
I liked it. But the more I think about it, the characters, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like, he still hasn't hit that movie that moves me like at my soul. Like, there's not enough emotion.
Yeah.
There's something still very cold, but yeah. Yeah. I think there's much more, but he tries so hard, and I think he's nearly there, because this movie is the closest we've got at it. Like, I heard he wrote the screenplay in first person.
I can see that.
He wanted this movie to be as much as it can through Oppenheimer's eyes.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy to me, considering, this is Oppenheimer's movie, but you got a strong B storyline character here with Strauss. And Strauss, during the third act and throughout the movie, he like takes over, where I've heard criticism that people think that the third act is like tacked on and feels like a different movie. And I'm like, he ain't paying attention. He ain't paying attention. Strauss is there the whole time.
He is from the very, very, again, he is a presence throughout that film, especially because the moment the stage was set whenever they were at the Advanced Institute, when Oppenheimer and Einstein were standing, were having a conversation by the pond.
Yeah.
And
we saw that pond like 5 billion times.
We saw that pond, yeah. And then, I mean, you're right. So I agree with you. The people who say that the last hour of the film is tacked on to it. No, it's not. It's just, it really.
It has its explosion in that third act.
Yeah.
Like Oppenheimer's, I think where some of the criticism is where, or some of this thinking that the third act doesn't make sense or doesn't feel like the same movie is because you have viewers who go into this being like, okay, Trinity test. Let's do this. We're all here to see the bomb explode. And I'm like, that's not what this movie is about. It's not called a Trinity test. It's about Oppenheimer. So yeah, we're going to spend the beginning of the movie when he's like a potential serial killer. Okay. We're going to do that. We're going to spend a lot of time in trains. We're going to see him make friends, go out on dates, and then we'll get to the Trinity test. But we're also we have also been spending a lot of time at this confirmation hearing. So I found this movie to be very interesting in terms of the cast is huge. The cast is like, I can't say it enough. It's just huge.
It is.
The names, the people who I didn't even think were going to be, Rami Malek is in it.
Yeah.
And they like tease you because he's in it for 5 seconds, barely says a word, and then he has an standout moment at the end.
Yep.
And I think the genius here is every character, there's a purpose. I mean, we talk a lot about supporting casts and how like supporting casts aren't used, and this is just it's too much about the main character. We have a movie called Oppenheimer. We spend a lot of time with Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
But the supporting cast are all used in such a way that, I mean, it is a chain reaction. Like every interaction, everything comes back and it all makes sense and it all gets connected in a very historical, fact-based, and also a very entertaining way.
Yeah. That was the thing that kept me at the edge of my seat, because this could easily have gone the way of a very dry and boring film, but I mean the pacing of it and the entertainment, the story that it was telling, and I know another criticism is people saying that it was not a very non-linear storytelling, and I know that some of that is just the way Nolan does his films. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna say those people have not seen every Nolan movie.
Right.
They're.
Yeah.
I don't understand that as being a criticism, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of just not being familiar with his style, but to me, that was also a very strong element of keeping you engaged. Because, and also going from the black and white to the color, to the various shades, and just to sort of help frame and contextualize where Oppenheimer was in his life, and during those moments, but also the going between the black and white and the color was also, to your point about the Strauss story being such a strong B story with this film, it was also showing how Strauss saw the world. As far as, he had a very black and white viewpoint on things, to the point where, he took Oppenheimer, he he was really thinking that he was sort of in control of these scientists and control of this narrative here, but actually he wasn't. And also, he also was a very, and this was also just a story about two men's arrogance and also in their hubris with Strauss and Oppenheimer. And so, and so, yeah.
I just wanted to add in there that I get the whole idea that it's black and white because that's how Strauss views the world. I don't buy that 100% just because of the similarities between him and Oppenheimer. Both of them.
Shades of Grey?
No, it's not Shades of Grey. Both of them are so much, whether it's Strauss in control of the scientists, like the man who's pulling the strings, or it's Oppenheimer as the creator of the atomic bomb. Both of them have this desire to push forward, to do this, and it's ultimately their own downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Like their own arrogance leads them to clouds their views of what's happening, even though Oppenheimer knows like how this works, while how this is going to play out, he still does it, because he still feels in control up until the point the project's done. Sayonara. We'll see you later.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it's this realization, well, I knew what the world was going to do with this, but now it's definitely out of my hands. I don't know if I thought this all the way through. Like, I was warned. I thought it would always be. And then Strauss, he like finds himself in this position. But I feel like with Strauss, he almost sees Oppenheimer and wants to be buddy, but the moment he realizes that it isn't going to happen, he can't pull that string with Oppenheimer. Mm-hmm. And he sees how Oppenheimer easily is able to play Strauss's game. That's when he becomes more manipulative. But I think there's way too much parallelism between them. I mean, they're perfect foils.
They are.
Yeah,
they are perfect foils. I mean, because because they're both. It's weird how they're both protagonists and antagonists. And I think that's what Nolan was really trying to show with their interactions in this film. I mean, and again, looking at events pre-bomb, post Trinity test, and bomb, because with the whole, with whenever they were on the Atomic Energy Commission and trying to, there was a whole sequence there in the dinner table and all the people, men talking, and I'm trying to remember like where in the sequence of things where Oppenheimer's in that one hearing with the AEC, and he makes a statement in the meeting, and then from that point forward, Strauss is just like pissed off at him.
Yeah, that gets a little bit hazy for me. Yeah. I think this is a very well edited movie, and I love that it's not linear storytelling, just because I think if it had been, it would have been just any other biopic.
Right.
But Nolan, of course, uses what he does best and manages to tell it in a very exciting way, by cross-cutting. But he also manages, there's a few spots where that it's like, okay, well, in sequence, when did this conversation happen versus this conversation versus this conversation? Right. Because it gets a bit jumbled.
Yeah. And that's Yeah, and so whenever they're having the men talking sequence around that table, is one place, and I know my wife and I are talking about that too, because we both were trying to figure out like where
I think that happened after though.
Yeah.
Because Strauss already had it in for him during that scene. Like
right.
it's almost as though he was coming, and I want to say that the hearing happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And he was using this opportunity at the dinner table to take back control and take back his power that he got taken away by like saying, you guys, somebody leaked. Okay. It's not coming from these 3 other sites. It's coming from your site because I say so.
Yeah.
Which it did, but.
Which it did. Yeah. Yeah. I think, now that we're talking about it, that makes sense. I think, and that's, that's where the sometimes editing choices that Nolan makes, like for example, Tenet, where it can jumble up.
But that's why people want to rewatch these things.
Yeah.
Is because you want to see what you didn't pick up on the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a way, again, if you walk out not still questioning timelines, questioning this, it just makes the potential rewatchability that much more higher, which is a good thing. Granted, it's a freaking 3-hour movie.
Yeah, it's 3 hours, but I did not feel it. I really, normally I could be like, you could trim a 10-minute, 5 minutes here, whatever. I mean, I will say, with the exception of the big flaw for me, obviously, well, at least the big flaw for me was just how they use Gene and the Florence Pugh scenes, as Gene, but, well, the 2 sex scenes, I just, that's where the coldness of Nolan comes through.
Was it the sex scene in the interrogation?
The sex scene in the interrogation, I understand the intent of what he was trying to show, the fishbowl and everything, and the vulnerability and being ripped, exposed, and in that, I just didn't feel like it, but the execution to me just didn't work for me. It just didn't.
Oh, see, I like the interrogation scene. I thought that was very well done. And in fact, one of my dad's concerns were about the sex scenes, because he's like, why do they need to put nudity in it? Like, and I told him, like, it's Nolan. There's a reason. As soon as that one played, he looked at me and said, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Okay.
The first one,
But I agree. Like, we saw Florence, she only had about 5 scenes, and yet I feel like majority of them she was nude the entire time.
Yeah.
So I don't mind it because it was so minimal.
It's not from a previous,
and I like the interrogation scene, and I think maybe if there was so much lust between those two.
Yeah.
That maybe that's why he made the decision because he wanted, I don't know, but we don't have to go that much further into it, but
I mean, those were the only, I mean, as far as and it's not from a prudish standpoint, I just didn't feel like it added anything to what he was trying to convey there. Yeah.
I think in terms of runtime, I actually do think you could probably shave a bit of it off.
I disagree.
I wouldn't put too much. I will be honest, I was late to the movie because of my whole infuriation about 20 minutes of previews. Okay. We cut it really close. Too close, because I think I missed about the good first 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
But I like stayed throughout the rest. I didn't look at my watch once. And I was engaged the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think some of the slower parts, and upon rewatches, you might notice some things where it's like, we didn't need to stare at that for 2 minutes. You could have we could have had a minute here. Like small things, not complete scenes completely removed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another cast member I just want to point out here because it bothered me. It didn't bother me, but I'm watching this movie and this guy comes on and I look at him and I say, Ari, you're not Chris Hemsworth. You're not Chris Hemsworth. And then I was like, there's 3 Hemsworths. You're not Liam. So you must be the other one. I watched the entire freaking movie thinking this was the other, not Chris, not Liam, the other Hemsworth. Mm-hmm. You know who I'm talking about.
Josh Hartnett.
Yes, exactly. He looks like a Hemsworth, and I'm not okay with this.
I honestly, I have to say, I did not realize that was Josh Hartnett either. I was like, I know this face. I didn't think it was a Hemsworth, but I was like, who is this? And then I saw the credits. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. It's Josh Hartnett. Oh yeah. His Lewis was, I love that character too, because I mean, that was another thing where, you know, you had the science and the politics and the policy, because, clearly Oppenheimer was like, he wasn't he was left leaning, but I don't think he was ever a full blown communist, but
he had commitment issues.
But he definitely had commitment issues for sure. But I did, that was another aspect of the story that I did like too, because it was a show, and really just added depth to the story that they were telling, that again, when you get to that last hour, having all that backstory and context does make those interrogation scenes and as far as with the security clearance resonate so much more, because you do have that.
Well, he did it to himself,
and he did it to himself. Yeah, it wasn't.
Strauss put together the kangaroo court. Mm-hmm. However, he wouldn't have anything if there wasn't anything there. Right. Like you made all these decisions. There was even the story that involved Casey Affleck, where which is another one that nobody was suspecting or knew was in the movie, at least as far as I know. Yeah. But where he lies, and he even admits, like, I don't know why. Yeah. That was a stupid thing to do. Yep. And so it's like a self-sabotage that occurs. Yeah. I mean, I knew all along that Strauss, like the moment he talked about, I forget the other guy who he was trying to point the finger out as to blame for Oppenheimer's downfall. Mm-hmm. But the moment he had that conversation with his staffer, I was like, okay, it was obviously you. Yeah. But whatever, we'll go back to that. But yeah, Robert Downey Jr., I think will get a nomination. I hope he wins. I hope so too. I love Cillian Murphy. He does great. Mm-hmm. This is a big role for him. I'm sure he's going to get nominated. He has a good chance of winning. Yeah. However, I feel like I've seen Cillian Murphy play this role at least 5 times.
See.
Yeah. Because I watched Peaky Blinders. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. But Robert Downey Jr. and just his celebrityness of it, like I can't not associate his face with him being who he is. At the same time, he managed to very much, I wouldn't say completely, like, get lost in the role, but he did really well. And because I felt like I was watching an evil Tony Stark.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just fun. I was like, you are an evil, and then you're not even that evil. You're just Tony Stark playing the villain in this other person's story. But yeah. I know who else I wanted to talk about. And another person who I did not know, there's so many people I did not know was going to be in this. Mm-hmm. And not just people, but also historical figures. Like, I had no idea Einstein would show up like 3 times.
Yeah.
But then we get Truman,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched
Oh,
the
yeah.
scene with Truman. I didn't know it was Gary Oldman until way after, and I was listening to people talk. Yeah. In that scene, because I've heard some like interesting dissections of that scene.
Mm-hmm.
He was not. He did not hand. I just want to clarify for people. He did not, in my opinion, he did not hand the cloth to Oppenheimer saying like, or as like in a kindly way of like, here you go. No, because this movie is about ego. Mm-hmm. And Truman in that scene, that one scene showed he had the biggest ego of them all because now he's president. Mm-hmm. And he dropped the bomb. He pushed the button. He gave the order. So the victory is his and also the killing of all those people. But he doesn't care about that because it's not his people.
Right.
So I just heard some mixed things and I'm like, that bothers me because I don't think that's right. That's the right interpretation of what's going on there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this movie is not necessarily like the movie. What I found also to be interesting, Will, mm-hmm. is this is a historical movie. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of events that play out that are history. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people who mm-hmm. pop up. Mm-hmm. Even name drops. JFK called it. Yeah. Yet it's not about necessarily any one event. I mean, Hitler dies off camera because this isn't a World War II movie.
No. This
isn't also a McCarthyism movie or a movie about that time, about McCarthyism. It's about a chain reaction, a chain of events mm-hmm. that took us from losing a war to building the weapon to win the war, only to have the main enemy of why we were building the weapon, they suddenly lost, but we still have this weapon and we want to show off. So there you go. Yeah. And then the fallout, which is also the fallout is just now the chain will continue because now there are more weapons, which will lead to more wars and just survival. It's triggered the survival instinct in a lot of the world leaders.
I like the analogy you used there, chain reaction, because that was another visual thing that I thought Nolan did well with showing the reactions in the interplaying with the waves and the atoms and everything, because you're right. I mean, this was a story about chain reactions and how one thing bouncing into another led to to multiple cascading impacts mm-hmm. on so many levels. And especially when you think into the science, and I just have a very rudimentary thing as far as quantum mechanics and those kind of physics and those kind of things, but that's we consider all the things that were going on there and how it one event led one the reaction of, like, as we called it before, Oppenheimer's decision to hang out with people who are politically problematic, and then it led to him losing a security clearance down the road, and so many things, and Truman, and all, and that pushing the bomb, thinking blood on your hands, I mean, it's just, I mean, I think that's why I was saying earlier how this film just sticks with you, because it is, when you think about what transpired there in in that with the Manhattan Project and the ramifications of it, and some of the things and the questions that even at that time, and they were showing that in the room when the generals were trying to figure out which city in Japan to bomb,
Mm-hmm.
and like and it came down to, well, we're not going to do Kyoto because my wife went on vacation there,
Right.
And the selfishness of.
But you notice they did not really, that scene was incomplete because we never went back and how Hiroshima and Nagasaki were determined.
Right.
Because that doesn't matter. Like, it's very interesting, the decisions that they do show and the ones that are just done off camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like there's intention behind those choices because we've seen so many movies with the glorification of war and the glorification of these events that lean the other way. Well, like, and I know you mentioned before how you saw Dunkirk, which I compare these two movies as Dunkirk. It's called Dunkirk. It's about the event itself.
Right. Yeah.
And it's about that one day, that 1 hour, there's 3 different storylines, I think, happening.
Yep.
But you also don't get attached to any character. I don't think any character is named.
No.
I feel like it's been a while since I've watched it, but it's about that event and that sequence played out through 3 different perspectives versus this movie. We get all the names, too many names. I still can't I go back and forth between character name and actor name.
I do too. Yeah. Cause it's like Benny Safdie, tell her. I mean, he wanted the H-bomb. I mean, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is about Oppenheimer and like a series of events. So they're like second cousins.
Yeah.
Movie wise.
Yeah.
That I think is really interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things, and we can't, another storyline that I definitely want to bring up too is, Oppenheimer's wife and Emily Blunt's performance there, especially during, all throughout. just one, how they met, she was already, she was married in a loveless marriage and how they basically worked together to like arrange their marriage as far as planning that out. But then just even after she realized that whenever he went to San Francisco, she knew about Gene and whenever Gene committed suicide or was murdered. And that was a kind of ambiguous thing that they kind of left there because, there are questions about whether or not there was foul play with Gene's death. And when we see that scene where, Robert finds out about it and how she's like, you have a job to do here. I guess, and then of course the interrogation later, as far as the wild card, like, they thought that like, because of all the things that they've exposed with this man, we're going to like we're going to flip his wife. And then she just like gets up there and defends. She completely like stands up and is like, no, I know this man has his flaws, but damn it, I'm sticking by him.
Right. Well,
and
he was interrogating her about her life more.
And her life. Yeah. But try to like impeach her to like, and pulling up all her faults and stuff.
Yeah.
To like,
it also wasn't a court. We're not here for persecution. We're here for denial.
Yeah.
That's.
But but all throughout that, I just felt that she was because thinking back to some other Nolan films, sometimes he sometimes doesn't portray women very well, as far as getting the most out of his actresses. But I felt that Emily Blunt and what he got out of her and what instead of being the dutiful wife, just sort of sitting back there holding the purse and like all hearing all this shit, she had agency. She was a force to be reckoned with just as much as Robert Oppenheimer was. And I really got that from her performance and from the direction in this film.
I don't know. I think she had one good scene.
But it was one good scene, but also even like thinking back to like whenever they went with their young son and like.
No, I know, like she had more than one scene.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't feel like, I think besides the interrogation scene, everything else we saw glimpses and potential. Like I don't think there was enough that was explored with her in terms of writing. Like, it's nothing about Emily Blunt's performance. I mean, it's Emily Blunt. It's just like, I'm not going to say anything bad about Florence Pugh's performance, but then again, I don't think she's a standout because her character wasn't given that much weight. So I actually think, I would beg the differ, and I still think that Nolan has an issue with writing for female characters. Okay. Because I think the female characters, there were few and far between, and none of them carried a big, like, arc. Because at one point, she's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And that's hardly ever touched on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Like,
it's just alluded to.
It's alluded to. Yeah. I mean, as far as how she was introduced and stuff, I mean, I guess between the two, between Jean and Miss Oppenheimer, I do feel that she got more to do.
Right.
And I felt, at least at the time, and I still feel like she, and I know it was just one scene, but I think there were just elements spread earlier on in the film that, like, what makes that scene work is because I felt like, at least I got more out of her than just that she was an alcoholic. And when they were out in Los Alamos and having those conversations as far as her background and her history, as far as her prior marriages and stuff, it just and then also, like, whenever Oppenheimer's was like a collapse in a mess when he finds out about Jean and how she handled that situation, when she found him, huddled over there in the corner by the rock or wherever it was. All those, the totality of those things building up is where I felt that was a very strong character for me.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Boy, I mean, we could talk for 3 hours. Yeah. No, I think, there's, like I said, there's so many places where this film could go. I mean, where we could go with this, but I think we hit a lot of the big ones, and I think you are correct in what you said earlier, Sarah, that, this film, because of the editing choices and other things, it definitely, even with his long runtime, it's definitely very rewatchable, because every time you approach it, you will find something different and piece things together in the story that maybe the first time you watched it you missed, because it is so much, quite frankly, that is being presented there.
Yeah. It is 3 hours long. So rewatchability, maybe an hour at a time.
Yeah. It definitely will be broken up.
I think that it, I think people should see this in the theater. Yeah. It's a beautifully shot movie. Mm-hmm. I did see it in IMAX. I'm not about the price of that, though. I can't say it enough. It's very beautifully shot.
Yeah.
And the sound mixing is one of the better in his filmography. I still had trouble hearing or understanding what characters were saying at the very beginning of the movie, but then eventually that stopped. I think overall this is probably in the top 3, best Nolan movies. And the cast delivered whatever they were given. And, I'm very pleased, and I'm more pleased that my history buff of a father enjoyed this movie, because I don't know. Sometimes when I see movies with him, like he makes or breaks me with what I can stand. Like if he doesn't like it, I never hear the end of it. Granted, he hated The Flash. So on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK, and also follow our Blur Trek handle again at SNN Blur Trek.
Yes, and Will is keeping track of who's following that account. Just put out that reminder. And you can follow me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit and threads at scene_n_nerd, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.